Hello everybody, on the last video we talked about how to set up Google Search Console onto your WordPress blog. This time I want to take you through actually what is in Google Search Console and all the information and the data that you can get out of it. If you haven't got it set up on your WordPress blog, then go over to the last video and check out how to actually do it. It is super easy. Then you're gonna have to wait a bit and come back here once all that data is collected, and then we'll go through all the information that you can get out of it so you can start to understand it. Like I said last time, Google Search Console is your only interface into Google search results. So it's really important that you understand all the data that you can see coming from it, because then you can start implementing strategies and doing different things which can start driving traffic towards your blog. So thank you very much to a friend of mine, Emma, who's provided me with access to her Google Search Console just so that we have an example, a real life example to go off and look at some of the data. Let's get into it. This is Google Search Console. Okay, here we are in Google Search Console. If you're not sure and you didn't watch the last video, then to get to Google Search Console is a little bit tricky, but you can see up here, okay? I've gone to search.google.com, but you have to put /search-console in. For some weird reason, if you just go to search.google.com, it just takes you to Google, which kind of makes sense, but also is quite annoying if you are trying to get to Search Console. But anyway, we're in here, and I'm in, like I said, an example, a real life example blog, okay? And once we're in here, we have all of these menus down the left hand side, which we're going to go through one by one and piece by piece so that you understand. But let's take a look. First of all, keep in mind this search bar up here, okay? This will allow you to search for any URL. So anything that's in the Google index, you'll be able to search for and find and take a more granular look at your website. A lot of the data will be sort of top level, it'll be whole website based, but this is where you'll be able to check individual pages. If you've got an issue, if you're not seeing a page that's in a particular, on the index, or you're not seeing it in Google or something, this is where you go. But anyway, let's take a step back, okay? You've got access to your Search Console. It's been running a while. What do you see when you load it up? Well, first of all, you get this performance grid, okay? So what this performance grid is telling you very simply is how many clicks specifically from Google are you getting to your website? And that's from Google results. So you can see here, this one, now you might see it differently, but this one has been segmented into two separate ones. We've got search results, which is, you know, anybody searching for, going on here and searching for trainers, okay? These are search results. So if I clicked through on any one of these, then their search console, they would find, you know, that data coming through. That'll be search results. And then there's discover. Now I'm going to find it a bit more difficult to show you discover, but if you're on your phone and you go to Google, the app Google, that is, you will probably have seen, certainly if you're on Android perhaps, you'll probably have seen like the news stories and the feed of stories and articles and blogs that have been recommended to you based on your user history, okay? That is Google Discover. Now that is very powerful, and actually you can see in particular here, and I'm going to do a whole different video on this, by the way, about Google Discover and all that. You can see here that Emma here has had a recent article which has appeared and featured on Google Discover, and it's driven so much traffic. 60% of her traffic over the last 3 months has been driven through that one article using Google Discover. It's super powerful. Now, getting on Google Discover is a whole different kettle of fish, but we'll talk about that in a separate video. What you'll probably see is the search results, okay? So you can see here, 10,345 total clicks over this period of time. You got a little mini graph here, and then you get the graph up here just to see all of the clicks that come in. And also what you'll see is you might get little notes on the bottom of the timeline here, which will just say that there's been some form of search update or an algorithm update, as you might know it as, that's occurred on this date. So if you see a blip, in your data, or a change in your data, then you'll be able to reference to it from these little from these notes. Now, they're probably not going to tell you what that algorithm update is. They're not going to tell you, hey, this affects this or that, but they will tell you that something has changed, okay? So that's the performance area. What we have down here is the coverage. So your coverage is talking about the number of pages that you've got on your site. Okay, so here we've got 1,055 valid pages. If you had any pages with any errors or anything like that, then they'd also appear in here. And this is where Google Search Console can be really powerful in telling us any problems that are on the site, any issues. Now, and is very diligent about this kind of stuff, so we have no errors on this site whatsoever, which is excellent. Then we have the next stage, which is experience. So this is talking about all the metrics and things which are talking about user experience, how users engage and interact with your page. And we can talk more about what Webcore Vitals is and what page experience is in another video, but here we can see everything is absolutely fine. If you do have issues, they'll be highlighted here. You'll be able to go in, look at them, rectify them, including anything, any issues that are happening on mobile. It's a really handy tool, because rather than you going and checking every page on your mobile phone to check, well, this looks fine and this looks okay and la-di-da-di-da, Search Console will tell you that and will highlight that, and probably won't penalize you immediately, but they will tell you, give you enough time to be able to rectify those problems, and they'll even tell you what the issue and the problem is, which is really good. Finally, we have enhancements. Okay, so enhancements are where we put certain pieces of code which might influence what is represented on the search results page. So here we have breadcrumbs. Okay, every page on this site has a set of breadcrumbs that go to it, and also the search box as well. So I don't know if you've seen this on search results pages. In certain cases, you'll be able to search the site directly from Google. So you'll see the search box for that particular site. I wish I knew an example off the top of my head, but unfortunately I don't. But you'll be able to search the site directly from there. Now, it's completely, whether you choose to put that improvement and enhancement on your site, it's completely up to Google's discretion whether it decides to use it or not and display it on search results pages. But having it there, having it ready is really, really good. Okay, so brilliant, excellent. We've got a deeper understanding now of what this overview is. If we go on to URL inspection, I've already talked about this. It's a really handy tool. I've just got one of Emma's blog pages loaded up here. Okay, I picked it randomly. I don't even know if it's indexed yet. I didn't even bother checking, so this is where I'm going to be really embarrassed. But what I'm going to do, I've just taken the URL and I've put it in there, and what this is doing now is actually going to interact with Google's index. Okay, Google's index is its catalog of every website and every web page that it stores. So I've gone and done that, and I've done that search. Okay, so this is really interesting. So what I've done, I've taken a page which has been live since the 12th of February, okay? And what I've done a search, and I've found that, okay, the first thing it's told me is this URL is not on Google, which is really interesting to me. But what it has told me here, it says it has been crawled, but it's not been indexed. So what that means is that Google is aware of its existence, probably because of the two things down here, okay? They've been added to the sitemap, and the sitemap has been updated, and as soon as you update your sitemap, Google, you can push that information to Google. So Google's gone and crawled the site. It's actually gone and used one of its Google bots and crawled the page, but it's not yet had the time to digest that information, to digest that page, and then understand where it's going to appear in the index. Okay, just because your page has been crawled does not mean it is yet in the index, because it actually needs to take some understanding of that page before it can do that, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't know where to rank it. So also what you get in this URL inspection tool, which is really handy, is when it was crawled up until the point of, you know, almost a time here, okay, 14th of February, Valentine's Day, at 2 p.m., half 2 in the afternoon, this was the last time that page was crawled. So if you're making changes, this is interesting because if you're making changes to your pages on an ad hoc basis, you might have added a paragraph to an article, you might have added some headings or done some SEO optimization. It's interesting to know when that was last crawled because that might affect, you know, what you see in your results. So that's always interesting. Crawled as, what does that mean? Well, actually, Google can crawl your website in different ways. It can crawl it as if it was a desktop. It can crawl it as if it was a smartphone. Now, nowadays, Google typically crawl everything through smartphone because, you know, most searchers now use their smartphone and consume information and data through their smartphone. So it will crawl your website. It will be an observer to your website as if you're a smartphone. Is crawling allowed? Yes, it is. So it's just confirming to you that there's no problems with, you know, this page being de-indexed. There's no problems with this page being blocked by robots.txt or anything like that. Has it been fetched, i.e. has it been then taken and indexed into the database? Yes, it has. There was no problems there. But we don't know if indexing is yet allowed because it's not done that processing yet. It's not, we're at a certain stage of the, I want to call it crawling, but that's not technically correct. We're at the certain stage of getting this page onto Google that we're not that quite at the indexing stage yet. And that's very common. That doesn't mean that there's any problems. That doesn't mean there's any issues or anything like that. That just means that we're not quite at that stage yet. So that's the URL inspection tool. Really handy if you're thinking of things on a page by page basis. You know, you've got a particular article and you want to check where it's at the index level. That's really, really handy. Another tool you can do is you can actually, and I'm going to do this on behalf of Emma here, you can actually request that these pages be indexed. So we know it's been crawled, but it's not been indexed. And some people say that this does kind of allow it a little bit of priority. I don't really take much adherence to that, but you can submit it to be indexed. So give a request, because if you believe that this page needs to be indexed right away, it's really important, it's timely, then you can ask it to be indexed like we're doing here. And it's just going to test the live URL to make sure that it can be indexed and go through this process. It's got the crawl already, and then it'll be checking to see if everything can be indexed. So we'll just fast forward while it does this, and then we'll come back to Search Console. Okay, so we're back here, and we can see that now we have been added to a priority crawl queue. Okay, or the page has already been crawled, but we've been added to a priority crawl queue, and hopefully this means that it'll be indexed quicker. Whether it does or not is a different matter, but we've done it. Okay, let's take a look at the performance section now, okay? So the performance section is more about the data that we can see. This is where it starts to get really interesting. So specifically here, we can see we're looking at a particular search type. So we've got web, image and video and news. Okay, so we're just looking at the web search results at this moment in time. And then we're going to look over the past 3 months. So we can see here that over the last 3 months, Emma's impression rate has really, really grown, okay? From getting 6,000 impressions to nearly over 8,000 impressions. So what does that mean? Okay, impression here is when someone searches for something on Google search results and then they see it on Google search results. Doesn't mean they've clicked through it. Doesn't mean they've gone onto the page. It means it's visible. And impressions here really is a parallel to visibility, okay? When I'm looking at total number of impressions in Search Console, I'm looking at the total visibility that the site has, okay? Because it means that it's become more visible. It's being shown on more search results. It's being shown for more keywords, more key phrases, which is a good thing, okay? The blue line, the clicks, okay, we can see has been a little bit more, you know, it's not grown as much. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? What we're talking about here is that clicks typically change when it's got higher up in the rankings, okay? So the visibility in terms of impressions, that's increasing, and that's a good sign. We'll probably see clicks change over the course of the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months, perhaps, because that impressions has gone up. Obviously, when pages get to the upper echelons, page 1, or the upper echelons of page 1, then we'll start seeing a difference in clicks, because click-through rates in those first couple of positions is really where things start to happen. So let's clear the data a little bit here, because I'm going to take impressions off, I'm going to take clicks off, and I'm just going to put average click-through rate. Okay, this is really interesting. So what we're seeing here on this turquoise kind of line now is we have a click-through rate. So click-through rate is the number of people that are seeing the page in their results, and then how many people are clicking through to that page. So we can see here, we've started here at about 2%, 1.9%, and by the end of the data, which is the 20th of Feb, 3 months later, we're down at 1.3. So there's been a reduction here in click-through rate. Well, what can I take from that? What can I glean from that in terms of information? Well, one of the biggest factors of click-through rate are two things, okay? What do we see on search results pages? So if I search for, I'm going to just do trainers again, because I always do trainers. When we're on search results pages, here, okay, we can see that we've got Sports Direct, we've got JD Sports, we've got ASOS, okay? Well, first of all, this is kind of a novelty because they've got images attached to their organic search entries, okay? Which is not typically what you'd see. But the two things that make a difference through click-through rate is, number one, this title. So what is the title of your page, okay? Is it relevant? Is it attractive? Is it going, compared to competitors, is it going to leap out at users to make them click through? And then secondly, it's the meta description, okay? Is the meta description appealing, attractive enough to make people click through? To clarify, meta description has no impact whatsoever on ranking, okay? It makes no impact whatsoever on where you appear, but it does make an impact on click-through, which is an important factor when you want people to absorb and read your content, okay? Finally, let's look at this orange line. So this is average position. Now, we need to be careful about average position, okay? Because average position you could see as like, it's my rank tracker. But what you need to be wary of is that, well, queries can drop in and out of position all the time, okay? Something that you may have ranked for previously has dropped out, or something has come in. So if a new keyword, you've written an article and that means that you've now got a piece of content which ranks for a new keyword, actually, what that means is you'll probably be on the lower echelons of the results there. You'll be in position, you'll be on page 8, page 9, page 7, whatever that is. Well, that'll drag your average position down. Now, it's not a bad thing that those new keywords have now, that new content's got you onto a new keyword. You might rise up the rankings there. But we need to take this metric as a pinch of salt. It's a good average position metric to go, okay, general performance is good, but it's not something to live or die by. So let's go past the data here, okay? I'm just going to turn all these on because I need to turn all these on to see what's going on. Okay, so let's take a look at what's in this little table underneath here. So we can see here we've got loads of tabs, queries. So these are all the queries that are currently gaining the most clicks for Emma. So teething canines, are canine teeth the most painful for babies? All of these things are attracting the most traffic quantity for her content. If we then sorted that and used the pages tab once it loads, what we'll then start seeing is what particular pages are having the most impact. Well, we can see here, this is the canines blog content that we could see on the queries before. We have a huge amount of clicks, we have a huge amount of impressions. Okay, it's clearly a very powerful page. And then we have an average position there of 10.5. Now that'll be an average position over a huge number of keywords and queries. So it's not like, oh, that page ranks number 3. It might do, but that'll be for a particular query. We can break this down even further. Whether this is useful or not is a different matter, but we can break this down further. We can break where our which countries we're getting traffic from, which devices we're getting traffic from. This sometimes is interesting to see, maybe not for bloggers, but certainly for businesses. You want to see, how is your particular audience engaging with you? Is it desktop? Is it on mobiles? And then finally, search appearance. Okay, so this is taking outside of just natural search. What other things are appearing? Are they videos like we've got here? Are they web-like results and things like that? So you can see, if you wanted to dig into this data, you could get so much data out of this. And what would I be looking at if I was looking at this table? Well, first thing that I would typically look at is what pieces of content have I got already that I've written that's on my site that perhaps could do with some improvement in one way or another. So the first thing I'd want to do that by is I'd probably search everything by impressions. Impressions means that there is room for improvement in terms of ranking. And I can see immediately here, okay, that we've got this Samsung Eco Bubble Perform piece of content. It's got a huge amount of impressions, which means there's a huge amount of search volume behind it. However, what we're finding is that the click-through rate, is probably a bit low. It's only 1.6 in comparison to some of the others, the 9.8s that we've got for one of our highest performing pieces of content. So what could we do? Well, we could look at the title, we could look at the meta description, we could look at improving the content mildly, adding pieces of content, maybe adding an update if it's an old post, to see if we can rise it up in the rankings. And there's a huge opportunity there to increase traffic levels from just doing some smaller updates rather than just constantly trying to add more content. There are other things here. We've got another example, okay, reusable swim nappies here, okay, low click-through rate, but a high number of impressions, which means there's again more scope for improvement on that piece of content to rise up the rankings. We just need to be looking at, if I was Emma here, I'd be looking at things like what are some of the first of all, what are the queries that have the opportunity here? Well, actually, we can go in and look that. So I've now filtered down just on this page, and now we can see some of the queries that have come through. So one of the biggest queries, which has got the largest search volume, which is impressions here, is swimming nappies. And so then what I want to do is I want to Google that, and I'd want to see some of the other pieces of content that are coming up. There's probably some e-commerce in there, but I'm sure there's some blogs in there as well. So what are they doing? What could I add to my blog? Do I need to add more frequently asked questions? Do I need to add more imagery, photography, whatever it is? I'd be looking at those competitors and seeing what is it that I can do. And that's what I'd be doing there. So there's a huge amount of information that we can get here out of Search Console. I'm going to skip over the Discover because I want to do a whole new thing on Discover, okay? I'm going to move on to actually what is in the index. This index section here is, basically Google telling us what's in the index. From my site, what's in the index. And we can see here there's no errors, which is a really handy tool. It'll tell you if there's any problems, any issues, but it'll say these are all the valid web pages that are here. Actually, a question that I saw on Reddit the other day was, why are there so many excluded pages? Okay, so these are pages so you might have a website and it might have 8,000 pages, okay? But that doesn't mean that Google's actually going to show 8,000 pages in its index or add it into its index. So why does it do that? Well, it might be that they have been crawled and they're waiting to be indexed, and we can see that there's 3,000 pages there, which is a lot, I'll be honest, so I'd probably want to investigate that further. We may have no index some pages on purpose. They're not relevant, they've got thin content, they're pages like, specifically on WordPress, these might be tag pages, these might be category pages, archive pages that are just not relevant. We don't really want those to appear in the index. It would just seem as if we were just adding as many pages with really thin content in, so we wouldn't want to do that. Then there are pages with redirects, pages with canonical tags. You don't really need to understand all of this, but they are pages that basically we've pointed at and said, no, this is a more relevant page. And these just naturally, organically happen. They're nothing to worry about. The only thing that I would be checking is I'd be going in there into this one, crawl but not indexed. If you've got a high number of them, I'd definitely be checking to make sure that that's relevant. Why is that the case? And I can see here actually, a big giveaway for me is some of these are blog article pages, but they've got some weird feed sub path at the end, and I just don't think that that's probably at all relevant, and Google's just gone, it's not really a relevant page. Okay, so here we go. It's a page that's been generated by I'm looking at it, I'm not even sure it's what's generating it, to be honest. So Google's just dismissed it and just gone, it's not relevant. You can see it's got nothing on it, but it's not relevant, so it's passed it by. So if that's an issue, if that's a problem, we'd be probably investigating that. But it looks like it's just made the call on the blogger's behalf, and that there's not a problem with that. But I would be going in and just making sure that everything's okay. Here's another one that's got tube squeezer. So I'm not sure what's generating these. Okay, so there's an image. It's kind of redirected to another image. Okay, so again, it's just dismissed it. Not a problem. But we've got a blog page here. Okay, key benefits of learning from home. So I'd want to look into that. I'd want to go into it, make sure it's not been redirected. It's not. Okay, it's a relatively new article. So, I'd be going in, using the URL inspector, which I can go to here. Just make sure that everything's okay with it. Okay, and there's the process that I'd probably go through. Let's move on to sitemaps. The first thing you do if you're just setting up Google Search Console, go and put your sitemap in. Okay, you should all probably have one. Most people will find their sitemap by going to, this is how I usually do it. If I'm looking at a new site, I'll go to sitemap.xml, I'd click OK, and there we go. It takes me automatically to the sitemap. I'd then take that URL and I would just place it in here. Okay, so if you've not already done that in your Google Search Console, go and do that and submit your sitemap. Okay, really important that you do that, because what's going to happen, what sitemap is, it's a kind of behind the scenes way of sort of pushing new URLs to Google. Okay, Google has crawlers, yeah, they go and crawl your site. We've seen it, that they go and crawl your site on a regular basis, but we saw the last crawl was on the 14th of February. Well, today's the 22nd, so it's not crawling every page of your site over and over again, waiting for new content. Sometimes you need to give Google a little push, and the sitemap's the way to do that. As soon as your sitemap says, oh, there's a new page here, it'll push it to Google and make Google aware of it as quickly as possible. So make sure you're putting your sitemap in here. You'll get a little status once you've uploaded it. If your status says success, then all is good in the world. Now, there's not many cases where people are going to use, we used to use removals all the time, I remember back in the day, but there's not many cases where you're probably going to use removals anymore. But if there is any pages that you ever need to immediately remove from the Google index, removals is the place to do it. And you can submit a request to get an urgent page removed from the Google index. Or if it's outdated, as you can see here, if it's outdated content, you can submit that as well. Okay, so make sure you're doing that. Let's move on to page experience, okay? So page experience is a new part of things where Google's got a big push at the moment about making sure that users get the best experience out of, browsing the web. So Search Console gives you automated feedback on any issues or any problems that you might have in terms of experience. And by Jove, we've actually got some on here, okay? So here we're looking at mobile, and I can see here we've got 325 failing URLs for Webcore Vitals. So Webcore Vitals is a series of metrics which Google have implemented, actual metrics with times and terminologies on them, which are there to improve the usability of websites. So they include stuff like, page loading speeds, and they include stuff like input delay, making sure we can input stuff into web pages as quickly as possible. And in this case, what we can see here is, Emma's got a few what we call CLS issues. They're cumulative layout shift issues, and we've probably all experienced issues like that on other web pages, where you go onto a web page and then while it's loading, things are like moving about and you're trying to hit buttons and they keep moving. So Google wants to reduce that as much as possible. So it's just making Emma aware here that We just need to look at those issues, and again, it will give you some more feedback, give you more information, the affected URL. So we can see here it's relating to this URL and 325 similar URLs, which it'll give you a list of here, okay, which is all good. And it'll even give you a link to PageSpeed Insights, which is a tool which will tell you exactly what the problem might be. So really good to get a look into that. And you know what? Pretty much, let's take a quick look at links. Almost forgot links there, because this is a really important part. So we know that links and backlinks are a really important part of ranking, okay, and SEO. And so what is good for you to know is, where are those links? Where are those external links? Where are those internal links? Have you got enough of them? Do they balance out quite nicely? And also, where are you getting links from, okay, as well? So you get kind of an insight. It's probably not as good as some of the other tools for obvious reasons that you have, but you get a kind of insight into the links that are going on your website, specifically here, the top linking sites. So these are links coming into your site, which is really interesting. So you might want to just, have a look through some of them, make sure that they're all there. It's a healthy number, and you can obviously, you can use it as a kind of monitoring tool if you are getting new links to your blog. Use it as a baseline monitoring tool to make sure you're going in the right direction and not the wrong direction. Okay, that was a whirlwind tour, guys, of Google Search Console, but I implore you to go in, get yourself set up on Google Search Console, and go and take a look, okay, and get to grips with it. See the data, and if you do have any questions, queries, go and put them in the comments of this video, and I'll try and answer them. If you've got a question about something that you're seeing, if there's a problem that you're having, maybe I'll do a new video about it. So go and check it out. Google Search Console, get yourself set up. If you've liked this video, guys, go and subscribe to the video, and please like the video. And if you do have any questions or queries, don't forget, put them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.